Hello, welcome back. Story 1. I, 26 female, inherited my grandparents' house 3 years ago. My dad passed away when I was 16, and my grandparents, his parents, stepped in and raised me. My mom was never really in the picture. I lived with them all through high school and college, and they always made it clear they wanted me to have the house one day. When they passed, within about a year of each other, their will left the house solely to me. In saunters Aunt Linda, 58 female, about 2 years later. She was my dad's older half-sister, whom had spent most of her life abroad with her mom, which caused my dad and her to not be close while growing up. She and her ex-husband had moved states away when I was a kid, and I only saw her during funerals. Fast forward to a year ago, Aunt Linda went through a nasty divorce and asked if she could stay with me just for a couple months while she got back on her feet. I said yes. I had a spare room and I felt like my grandparents would have wanted me to help out. That was 12 months ago. In that time, she hasn't worked at all. She says it's too hard to find something at her age, but doesn't really try either. I pay all the bills, buy all the food, etc. She buys some groceries here and there and occasionally does laundry, but that's it. She's taken over the guest room completely, rearranged furniture in the living room, put up religious decor everywhere. I'm agnostic. And even tried to repaint the hallway without asking. A few months ago, she started referring to the house as ours when talking to people. Last weekend was what broke the camel's back. I came home Saturday to find her throwing a ladies' brunch in my kitchen to some women from her church. There was food I didn't buy, dishes I had never seen, and people I have never met going through my fridge. They gave me odd looks when I came to the kitchen, and one of them actually asked if I was the Linda's tenant. I corrected her and said, no, I own the house. Linda laughed awkwardly and said, she thinks she does. After they left, I asked her what that was about. Linda laughed awkwardly and said, she thinks she does. After they left, I asked her what that was about. She said my grandparents never would have wanted her homeless, and that she had every right to be here, that this was her family home and I was just playing landlord because I had a lucky will. I reminded her that the house is legally mine and always was meant to be. I told her she had 60 days to move out and that I would be putting it in writing. She flipped out and said I was betraying family and how I was throwing her out at her age. I didn't budge and told her she's going. To make things worse, her daughter, my cousin Ellie, 19 female, called me crying, saying I'm cruel and Aunt Linda might hurt herself if she ends up alone. I told her she doesn't have to end up alone because Ellie can take her in. She stuttered and offered a lot of excuses, how she plans to go to college next year, etc., and can't afford to keep her, etc. I feel like I've been patient for too long. I'm not dealing with her bullshit anymore. So, am I the a-hole for evicting my aunt from the house I inherited? Update. First off, I want to thank everyone who commented. I was honestly shocked by the amount of support. A lot of you pointed out things I had been kind of gaslighting myself about. I handed her the eviction notice and at first she gave me total silent treatment. Then she started leaving religious pamphlets on the kitchen counter every day and burning incense in the hallway. It was so obviously passive-aggressive that it would have been funny if I wasn't living the situation. My cousin Ellie suddenly called me and basically begged me to reconsider, saying her mom doesn't have anyone else. And if she spirals, it will be on me. I told her if that happens, it will be on her because she's her own daughter. If anyone needs to make arrangements for her mother, it will be her. I'm not responsible for her mom's mental health. Aunt Linda has done zero to help me and my family through anything. So I've done more than my fair share for her. A few days later, Aunt Linda tried a new approach. What if I rent the guest room from you officially? I said no, because 1, she has no income, and 2, I don't want to live with her anymore, period. She didn't like that answer and was burning more incense the whole day. I reminded her she was the one who told a stranger I didn't own the house. If she hadn't pulled that, she'd still be living here. I wish it hadn't come to this, and I do feel a little like the villain to some family members. But I've also started sleeping better since giving the eviction notice, which says a lot. You're not an a-hole, OP. You're a good person. Your grandparents raised you well, and I'm sure they would be proud of the person you've become. You took your aunt in for a year, and you would have probably continued letting us stay in your house if she didn't try to turn it into her house and disregard your grandparents as well. Your aunt was being a freeloader, and she didn't deserve the help you gave to her. You didn't owe her anything, and the minute she became entitled, that's when she started begging to be evicted. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for not letting my friend and her husband stay with me after they let me stay with them? Several months ago, I was the victim of a burglary at my home, while myself and my children were home. I won't go into details of what happened, but it was bad. And afterwards, I couldn't stay in the house that night. Even though the police had cleared it and the door repair people had fit me with a new door and lock. I just couldn't bear it, so I packed my kids up and went to my friend Jane's apartment, where she lives with her husband George. Jane is super sweet, but George has always been a crusty grump and he has never really liked me or any of Jane's friends. Jane is my best friend and she loves my kids, so I knew she would answer the door and let us stay. She put us up in her guest bedroom together and made sure we were comfortable, but I could hear George grumbling in their bedroom about how having us here was a burden, how we were putting him out, basically how our presence was a burden, and how he bet we didn't even actually have a break-in. He said I probably got evicted because I didn't pay rent. That happened one time 3 years ago. I was pregnant, got into a bad car accident and delivered early. My baby had to be in the NICU for a while. I had to have surgery. I ran out of savings, couldn't get a loan, and it was either rent or feed my older kids, and I chose to feed my kids. I got my money situation back together within a year, and I'm doing well now. In the morning, I made breakfast for everyone, hoping that would get George to soften, but he just kept complaining. And eventually Jane and he were arguing behind a closed door, and it was so awkward. And my kids were uncomfortable, so we just snuck out and went home and tried not to be scared of the house. Last night, Jane and George showed up at my house in the middle of the night. Apparently there had been a small fire that made their own apartment uninhabitable. And they are going through financial hardship and can't afford a hotel, so they came to me. I agreed to let Jane stay, but told George that the way he behaved towards me when I was in need of a safe place for myself and my kids had really bothered me and hurt my feelings. I told him that while I understood that it was bothersome having 3 kids and a grown woman show up at 3 a.m., I had had something awful happen and he could have shown some empathy. George threw a fit and ordered Jane to leave with him, which she did. She texted me later and said they had spent the night in their car and that she couldn't continue our friendship right now because of what I did. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole, OP. I understand that you were trying to make a point and get back at George for not being welcoming when you and your children stayed over at theirs. But you have to realize now that by doing what you did, you became a worse person than George. At least he helped. He let you in during your emergency, but when it was time to help them during their emergency, you wanted him to stay out while you took Jane in. How did you think that was going to go? They're married. There was no way she would have left her husband. Even if you were angry at George, you should have let them both in for Jane's sake. That's what a real friend would have done. Now for some comments. You're the a-hole. They let you and your multiple children stay in their home when you showed up unannounced. George shouldn't have been a dick about it, but he let you stay regardless. Also, did you actually expect an outcome where Jane would have stayed without her husband? I hope you're not surprised at her reaction. I completely understand why she doesn't want to be your friend. You're the a-hole. You lowered yourself to beneath his level because at least you and your children had a warm, safe place to sleep. Don't you try to teach your kids to be the better person. Yes, he's a jerk and mean and difficult but he's a package deal with your best friend. Your best friend who chose to endure his complaining and fighting to protect you and your kids. You ended up putting her out too. Even if she'd stayed, there would be hell to pay later, I'm sure. You're the a-hole, not for being upset at his reaction, but for turning away your friend in a time of need after she most likely stuck up for you last time when they were arguing behind closed doors. Even if you said she could stay, it's like you were making her choose between you and her husband, while her house is burning down. For me, it wouldn't be a problem to have that discussion, but now doesn't seem like the time because it has consequences on your friend, which I doubt were your intentions. You wanted him to know what it feels like, but because they're together, it hurt her too. Not the time for that discussion, in my opinion. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for objecting to future sister-in-law's use of family wedding veil? My younger brother James is getting married to Lisa, and they are planning on having some unconventional aspects to their ceremony, like Lisa wearing a wedding dress with a black pattern. She expressed to me that she wants to wear a wedding veil that my great-grandmother wore, and so has every woman on my side of family since, including me, for their wedding. Lisa said she wanted to wear something from James's side because she's not really close to her own immediate family. I was initially delighted to hear she wanted to, but then Lisa said that she plans on permanently shortening the veil because that would feel more like her and feel like it's a joint union of her background and James's. I got really upset because not only is it completely defacing the veil to me, but it essentially ruins the veil for anyone else. Like my younger daughter, who I want to have the veil on her future wedding day. Lisa told me that it's selfish to not allow her to do this one small thing and stormed out. I got a text from James calling me an a-hole for getting her upset over a small thing. Am I the a-hole? Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. OMG, I thought you were going to say you didn't want to let her wear it, which would have been mean. But she wants to alter it? What the F? You don't borrow an heirloom and make it more you. You borrow it so it makes you more of the family. Let her borrow it the day of, but don't let her take it home with her. She can't be trusted if she thinks shortening it is a little thing. You'll be saving the heirloom and her place in the family too. Okay, was going to call you the a-hole till I got to the part where she wants to permanently alter the veil. That's a no-go and not the a-hole. Thank goodness she mentioned this first and didn't just borrow the veil and do it. If she changes her mind on this, lend her the veil, but don't trust her with it. Bring it with you to the wedding. Be there when she dresses and take it back when she changes afterwards. Obviously not the a-hole. You don't get to permanently damage a family heirloom that's being passed down. A compromise, if you were interested in pursuing one, could be to go to a seamstress with your sister-in-law and see if there was anything they could do to alter the veil without cutting it. You would be surprised what they can do without causing permanent damage. My sister wore my mother's, originally our grandmother's, wedding dress. The sleeves were lace and too small for her arms, so she had the sleeves removed and the bodice adjusted to make the sleeveless style work. It turned out gorgeous and all the sewing work was reversible after the wedding. She took the dress back to the seamstress and they were able to return the dress to its original state.